She was sleeping quietly when the danger started. Just an 11-year-old kid in the middle seat. But this normal-looking girl knew secrets that even top military officers didn't know. When two fighter jet pilots needed urgent help, they asked for her, not from generals or commanders. From her. Call sign Viper. Before you watch the full story, comment below from which country you are watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the sky as Denver International Airport came alive with another busy day. Thousands of travelers moved through the massive terminal like ants in a colony. Each person focused on their own journey, their own destination, their own problems. The air smelled like a mixture of fresh coffee, cinnamon rolls from nearby bakeries, and that unique airport scent of recycled air and possibility. Among the crowds of business travelers in suits, families wrangling energetic children, and elderly couples moving slowly with their rolling suitcases, one small figure sat quietly in a corner seat near Gate 23. She was so unremarkable, so ordinary, that not a single person gave her a second glance. Her name was Emma Rodriguez, and she was 11 years old. Emma wore a purple hoodie that had seen better days. The fabric was soft and worn from countless washings, and across the front was a sparkly unicorn design that was starting to fade and peel. Her jeans were the comfortable kind, faded blue with a small patch sewn over the left knee where she had torn them during a particularly intense soccer game 3 months ago. On her feet were sneakers that lit up when she walked, flashing pink and blue lights with each step. The kind of shoes that screamed, "I'm a kid," to anyone who noticed. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail that had started to come loose. A few strands fell across her face as she hunched over her phone, her thumbs moving rapidly across the screen as she played a colorful puzzle game. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the telltale sign of someone who had been awake far too early. Around her neck hung a bright orange lanyard that she absolutely hated. The plastic badge attached to it read, "Unaccompanied minor," in bold black letters that might as well have been neon signs saying "I'm traveling alone and I'm just a kid." The badge also displayed her name, her flight number, and her destination. Emma thought it made her look like a baby, but airline regulations were strict. Any child under 12 traveling without an adult had to wear the identification at all times. A heavy backpack sat at her feet, so stuffed with books, snacks, and entertainment that it looked like it might burst. Colorful patches covered every available inch of the fabric: Grand Canyon, Yellowstone National Park, Mount Rushmore, the Space Needle in Seattle. Each patch represented a trip, a memory, a piece of Emma's life scattered across the country as she traveled between her mother's house in Denver and her father's various military postings. "Excuse me, sweetheart, is this seat taken?" Emma looked up to see an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair styled in soft curls. She wore a floral dress that reminded Emma of her grandmother, and she carried a large purse that looked like it weighed almost as much as Emma's backpack. "No, ma'am, it's free," Emma replied politely, moving her backpack slightly to give the woman more room. "Thank you, dear." The woman settled into the seat with a soft sigh of relief. "These old bones aren't what they used to be. All this walking in airports just wears me out." She glanced at Emma's orange lanyard and smiled warmly. "Traveling by yourself today?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm going to visit my dad in Colorado Springs." "Oh, how wonderful. I'm sure he's excited to see you. Does your father live there?" "He works at the Air Force Base," Emma said, keeping her answer simple. She had learned over the years not to share too much information with strangers. Her mother had taught her to be polite but cautious. "The Air Force." The woman's face lit up with recognition. "My late husband served in the Navy for 22 years. God rest his soul. Military families are special. You must be very proud of your father." Emma smiled, though something sad flickered in her eyes. "I am proud of him. I just wish I could see him more often. He's always really busy with work." "I understand, sweetheart. Military life can be hard on families, but I'm sure your father thinks about you all the time, even when he's working." "I know he does," Emma said softly. She returned her attention to her phone, hoping the conversation would end naturally. She wasn't being rude, just tired, so incredibly tired. What this kind elderly woman didn't know, and what nobody in that entire crowded airport terminal could possibly know, was that Emma Rodriguez wasn't just an ordinary 11-year-old girl visiting her father. She carried secrets that were classified at levels so high that even most members of Congress had never heard of them. Emma's father wasn't just any Air Force personnel. Colonel Marcus Rodriguez was one of the top combat flight instructors at the United States Air Force Academy. He had flown over 100 combat missions in his career. He had trained some of the best pilots in the entire military. He was a legend among those who knew about such things. But even more remarkable was what Emma herself had been doing for the past 3 years. Since the age of 8, Emma had been part of a program so secret, so classified, that it existed in documents marked with the highest levels of security clearance. The program was called Project Horizon, and it represented one of the most unusual military initiatives ever conceived. Project Horizon was based on a discovery that military researchers had made almost 6 years ago. They had found that certain young people, specifically children between the ages of 8 and 14, possessed cognitive abilities that were superior to even the most experienced adult operators in very specific tactical situations. The researchers discovered that young brains processed spatial information faster than adult brains. Children made decisions without the hesitation that came from overthinking or second-guessing. They could identify patterns in chaotic situations that adults completely missed. Their reaction times were faster, their visual processing more acute, and their ability to multitask in high-stress environments was remarkable. The military had already been using younger operators for drone missions because they consistently outperformed older, more experienced personnel. Video game skills translated directly to real-world applications in ways that surprised everyone. But Project Horizon took this concept much further. Instead of just operating drones, Project Horizon children were trained to provide real-time tactical support and coordination for actual combat and emergency situations. They learned flight patterns, weapon systems, tactical communication protocols, emergency procedures, and crisis management. They studied aircraft capabilities, geographical features, and strategic thinking. Emma had been recruited after she participated in what her school thought was a routine cognitive assessment test designed to improve educational standards. The test was actually a screening tool searching for specific markers in spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and crisis decision-making abilities. Emma had scored in the 99.9 percentile. Her results had been so extraordinary that they were immediately flagged by the computer systems running the assessment. Within 2 weeks, 2 people in civilian clothes had arrived at Emma's house to speak with her parents. They explained Project Horizon carefully, showing classified documents and research data. They emphasized that participation was completely voluntary. They promised that Emma would never be put in direct physical danger. They assured her parents that the training would never interfere with her normal childhood or education. Emma's mother had been strongly against it at first. Her daughter was only 8 years old. She should be playing with dolls, riding her bicycle, having sleepovers with friends, and worrying about nothing more serious than spelling tests and playground politics. But Emma's father, being military himself, understood the opportunity differently. He knew the value of what they were offering. He knew that his daughter had a genuine gift, and that gift could potentially save lives. He also knew Emma well enough to recognize that she would thrive in this kind of environment. They presented the choice to Emma and let her make the decision. After thinking about it for 3 days, asking questions, and imagining what it might be like, 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez said yes. She wanted to do it. She wanted to learn. She wanted to help people. The training started slowly and carefully. At first, it was just games on a special tablet computer. Puzzles that taught spatial awareness without feeling like work. Strategy games that developed tactical thinking while being fun to play. Flight simulators that looked exactly like video games, but were actually teaching real aviation principles and procedures. Emma loved every minute of it. She was naturally good at these activities, and the positive feedback from her instructors made her want to work even harder. She progressed faster than any other child in the program's history. As months turned into years, the training became increasingly sophisticated and complex. Emma learned proper radio communication protocols used by military pilots. She studied the capabilities and limitations of different aircraft types. She memorized tactical procedures for various emergency scenarios. She ran through hundreds of simulations involving aircraft emergencies, hostile situations, coordinated responses, and crisis management. Her instructors were consistently amazed by how quickly she absorbed information and how naturally she applied it. By the time she was 9 years old, Emma could coordinate complex tactical situations better than many adult officers with years of experience. By age 10, she was successfully completing simulation scenarios that active duty personnel struggled with. And now, at 11 years old, she had logged over 2,000 hours of advanced tactical training. The military had given her a call sign just like real pilots received when they earned their wings. They called her Viper. The name came from her ability to strike at the heart of any problem quickly and accurately, like a snake. In training scenarios and simulations, she could identify the critical element of any situation within seconds and provide solutions that experienced commanders took much longer to develop. But all of this was absolutely, completely secret. Emma couldn't tell her friends at school. She couldn't post anything about it on social media. She couldn't even tell her mother specific details about what she was learning, though her mother knew she was involved in some kind of military program. To the outside world, to everyone at school, to her soccer teammates and her neighbors, Emma Rodriguez was just a normal fifth grader. She got good grades, especially in math and science. She played midfielder on her soccer team. She liked to read books about space exploration and marine biology. She argued with her mom about bedtime and screen time limits. She was completely, utterly ordinary. Except, she wasn't. Not even close. Flight 2847 with service to Colorado Springs is now ready for boarding. We'll begin with passengers needing extra time, families with small children, and our unaccompanied minors. Please have your boarding passes ready and approach the gate. Emma stood up, slinging her heavy backpack over one shoulder. The elderly woman smiled at her warmly. Have a wonderful visit with your father, dear. Safe travels. Thank you, ma'am. You too. Emma replied with genuine politeness. She walked to the gate counter, where a cheerful gate agent with a name tag reading Michael was waiting. He checked Emma's boarding pass and the special paperwork required for unaccompanied minors. All right, Emma. I'm going to walk you down to the plane and introduce you to the flight crew. They'll take excellent care of you during the flight. Sound good? Yes, thank you, Emma said, though she had done this routine many times before and knew exactly what to expect. They walked together down the jetway, a long enclosed corridor that connected the terminal to the aircraft. Emma could already hear the sounds of passengers settling in, the thump of luggage being shoved into overhead compartments, the murmur of conversations, the occasional cry of a baby. The gate agent led her onto the Boeing 757 and spoke to the head flight attendant, a woman who looked to be in her early 40s with blonde hair pulled back in an impeccably neat bun. Her name tag read Patricia. Patricia, this is Emma Rodriguez, our unaccompanied minor for this flight. She's in seat 12C. Patricia's face broke into a warm, professional smile that had been practiced thousands of times. Hi, Emma. Welcome aboard. I'm Patricia, and I'll be your main point of contact during the flight today. If you need anything at all, anything whatsoever, you just press the call button above your seat or find me in the aisles, okay? Okay, thank you, Emma said with a small smile. It's just a short flight, about 2 hours. Before you know it, you'll be giving your dad a big hug. Patricia consulted a tablet showing the seating chart. Let me show you to your seat. The plane was already about 3/4 full, with passengers still boarding behind them. She passed rows of business travelers already engrossed in their laptops, families trying to entertain restless children, elderly couples settling in with books and magazines, college students with headphones already on. Finally, they reached row 12. Emma's heart sank slightly when she saw her assigned seat, 12C, the dreaded middle seat, trapped between 12A and 12D, with no window to look out of and no aisle for easy bathroom access, just cramped space between two strangers for 2 hours. The window seat, 12A, was already occupied by a businessman who appeared to be in his mid-40s. He wore an expensive-looking dark blue suit with a red tie that had been loosened slightly. His leather briefcase was tucked neatly under the seat in front of him, and his laptop was already open on his tray table, showing what looked like complicated financial spreadsheets. He barely glanced up as Emma approached. The aisle seat, 12D, was taken by a teenage boy who looked about 16 or 17 years old. He wore a black hoodie and had white wireless earbuds in his ears, connected to the phone clutched in his hands. His eyes were fixed on what appeared to be a video, and he was completely absorbed in his own world, not acknowledging Emma's presence at all. "Excuse me, sir," Emma said quietly to the businessman. "I need to get to the middle seat." The businessman looked up with an expression of mild annoyance at being interrupted from his work, but he stood up politely to let Emma squeeze past. She carefully climbed over his legs, trying not to step on his shiny dress shoes or bump his laptop, and settled into the narrow middle seat. Her backpack barely fit in the space under the seat in front of her. She had to push and shove it to make it work. The armrests on both sides were already claimed by her seatmates, leaving her with no comfortable place to put her arms. "There you go, all set," Patricia said cheerfully. "Remember, just press the call button if you need me." "Thank you," Emma said again, as Patricia walked away to help other passengers. Emma fastened her seatbelt and tried to find a comfortable position in the cramped space. The businessman to her left had already returned his attention to his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as he worked on his spreadsheets. The teenager to her right hadn't moved at all, still completely absorbed in whatever video he was watching on his phone. Emma pulled out her own phone and sent a quick text message to her father. "On the plane now, taking off soon. Love you, Dad." The response came almost immediately, like her father had been waiting with his phone in his hand. "Can't wait to see you, mija. I'll be waiting at the gate. Love you so much. Have a safe flight. Te amo." Emma smiled at the message, feeling a warm glow in her chest. She hadn't seen her father in almost 2 months because his training schedule at the academy had been incredibly intense. This week-long visit had been planned for months, and she was genuinely excited to spend real quality time with him. They had made plans to hike in the mountains, visit the Air Force Academy Museum, go to a Rockies baseball game, and just hang out together like a normal father and daughter. The overhead speakers crackled to life with that distinctive airplane announcement sound. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard United Airlines Flight 2847 with service to Colorado Springs, Colorado. This is your captain, Jennifer Walsh, speaking from the flight deck. On behalf of First Officer Tom Chen and our entire crew, we'd like to welcome you aboard this Boeing 757 aircraft. Our flight time today will be approximately 2 hours and 5 minutes. We're currently number 3 for takeoff, so we should be pushing back from the gate in just a few minutes. The weather in Colorado Springs looks beautiful today. Clear skies and 72 degrees. We're expecting a very smooth flight. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for departure." These sounds were like a comfort blanket to her after all her training. The heavy thunk of the boarding door closing and locking, the whir of air conditioning systems, the various beeps and dings of aircraft systems coming online, the rustling of passengers settling in and stowing their belongings. Flight attendants began the safety demonstration that Emma had seen probably 50 times in her life. They showed how to fasten and unfasten seatbelts, explained that in the unlikely event of a water landing, the seat cushion could be used as a flotation device, pointed out the emergency exits, and demonstrated how to use the oxygen masks that would drop from the ceiling if cabin pressure was lost. Emma had memorized every word of this demonstration years ago, but she watched politely anyway, making eye contact with the flight attendants to show she was paying attention. It was the respectful thing to do. The businessman beside her continued working on his laptop right up until a flight attendant politely asked him to put it away for takeoff. He sighed heavily, clearly annoyed at having to stop working, but he complied with the regulations. He closed the laptop and slid it into the seat pocket in front of him. The teenager in the aisle seat finally removed one earbud when a flight attendant reminded him that all electronic devices needed to be in airplane mode during takeoff. He made the adjustment on his phone but kept watching his video with the sound turned off. Emma felt the gentle push as the aircraft was pushed back from the gate by a tow vehicle on the tarmac. Then came the familiar rumble and high-pitched whine of the jet engines starting up, first one and then the other. The vibration traveled through the entire airframe, a feeling that Emma had come to associate with the beginning of journeys. The aircraft began to move under its own power, taxiing slowly away from the terminal. Emma leaned slightly toward the businessman to look past him out the window. Denver International Airport was massive, one of the largest in the United States, with multiple terminals, 6 runways, and enough space that it sometimes took 15 or 20 minutes just to taxi from the gate to the runway. The plane turned and moved along the taxiway, passing other aircraft. Emma could see a Southwest 737 pushing back from its gate. A Frontier Airlines plane with a giant animal painted on its tail was taking off in the distance. Ground crew members in bright yellow vests drove around in various vehicles, coordinating the intricate dance of airport operations. Finally, after about 10 minutes of taxiing, the aircraft turned onto the runway and came to a complete stop. Emma felt the familiar pause, that moment of anticipation before takeoff. She knew what was coming next. The engines increased to full power with a deep, thunderous roar that she could feel in her chest. The whole aircraft vibrated with barely contained energy. Then the brakes released and they were rolling, picking up speed rapidly as the runway lights blurred past the windows. Faster and faster they went, the rumble of the wheels on the runway filling the cabin. Emma felt the nose of the aircraft lift slightly, and then suddenly the rumbling stopped as the wheels left the ground. They were airborne, climbing smoothly into the morning sky. Emma loved this moment. The transition from ground to air, from earthbound to flying, always felt magical to her, no matter how many times she experienced it. Through the businessman's window, she could see Denver falling away below them, the buildings getting smaller, the streets turning into neat geometric patterns. The aircraft banked slightly to the right, turning toward their eastward course to Colorado Springs. The Rocky Mountains were visible in the distance, their snow-capped peaks majestic against the blue sky. As they continued climbing and the seatbelt sign finally turned off with a soft ding, Emma felt the exhaustion of her early morning wake-up call finally catching up with her. She had been awake since 4 in the morning. Her mother had driven her through dark, empty streets while Emma dozed in the passenger seat, still wearing her pajamas and clutching a travel pillow. She had changed into her clothes in an airport bathroom, brushed her teeth at a sink that was too high for her to reach comfortably, and grabbed a blueberry muffin for breakfast that she had only half finished because her stomach was still asleep. Now, with the gentle drone of the jet engines creating a soothing white noise, with the slight motion of the aircraft rocking her like a cradle, with the warmth of the cabin making her drowsy, Emma felt incredibly sleepy. She leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes, just planning to rest for a moment. Within seconds, she was fast asleep. She slept deeply and completely, the kind of profound sleep that only comes after being awake far too early. Her head tilted slightly to the right, toward the teenager in the aisle seat, though he didn't notice or care. Her hands rested loosely in her lap. Her breathing became slow and steady. She didn't wake up when the flight attendants came through the cabin with their beverage cart, offering coffee, juice, and soft drinks to passengers. She didn't notice when they came by a second time, offering small packages of pretzels and cookies. She slept right through all of it. The businessman beside her glanced at the sleeping child once and thought to himself that she must be exhausted. Poor kid. Then he returned to his work, pulling out his laptop again now that they had reached cruising altitude. The teenager in the aisle seat never looked at Emma even once. He was too absorbed in his phone, switching from videos to a mobile game, completely in his own world. And Emma slept on, peaceful and unaware, just another tired kid on an airplane. Nobody in that entire aircraft had any idea who she really was. Nobody suspected that this ordinary-looking 11-year-old girl in a unicorn hoodie possessed skills and training that could coordinate military operations. She was just a sleeping child in seat 12C. For now. Up in the cockpit, Captain Jennifer Walsh and First Officer Tom Chen were thoroughly enjoying what appeared to be a perfect flight. The weather was cooperating beautifully, with clear skies and unlimited visibility. All of the aircraft systems were functioning normally, every indicator showing green and nominal. The air was smooth, with no turbulence to bother the passengers. Captain Walsh, at 42 years old, had been flying commercial aircraft for 15 years. Before joining United Airlines, She had spent 8 years as a Navy pilot, flying C-2 Greyhound cargo aircraft that landed on aircraft carriers. She had thousands of hours of flight time and had handled every kind of situation, from severe thunderstorms to mechanical failures. She was calm, experienced, confident, and highly respected by her peers. First Officer Chen was 31 years old and had been with United Airlines for 6 years. He was sharp, dedicated, always eager to learn from more experienced pilots like Captain Walsh. He handled much of the routine communication with air traffic control, freeing Walsh to focus on the bigger picture of managing the flight. "Beautiful morning for flying," Walsh commented, scanning the instrument panel out of long-established habit, even though everything showed normal. The altimeter read 35,000 ft. Airspeed was steady at 480 knots. Fuel consumption was right where it should be. Clear skies all the way to Colorado Springs. Doesn't get much better than this. "Absolutely perfect," Chen agreed, making a notation in the flight log. "We might even arrive a few minutes early if these tailwinds hold up. Passengers will be happy about that." "How's our fuel looking?" Walsh asked. Though she could see the gauges herself, it was just good practice to verbally confirm important details. "Right on target. We've got plenty of reserves, no issues there." Walsh smiled and settled back in her seat, letting herself relax slightly. Days like this were why she loved flying. No drama, no stress. Just the pure joy of guiding a massive aircraft smoothly through the sky while her passengers read books, watched movies, or napped peacefully in the cabin behind her. She had no idea that in exactly 38 minutes, everything would change. This perfect, peaceful flight was about to become one of the most challenging situations of her entire career. But for now, blissfully unaware, she and Chen simply enjoyed the smooth flight and made small talk about weekend plans. In the cabin, passengers were settled into their various activities. Some read books or magazines, others worked on laptops or tablets. A few watched movies on the seatback entertainment screens. Parents tried to keep children entertained with coloring books and games. Elderly passengers dozed or gazed out the windows at the landscape far below. Flight attendants moved quietly through the aisles, collecting trash and empty cups, offering refills on beverages, helping passengers retrieve items from overhead bins. Patricia, the head flight attendant, kept a special eye on the unaccompanied minor in seat 12C, checking on Emma every few minutes even though the girl was sound asleep. "Poor thing is exhausted," Patricia whispered to another flight attendant as they passed Emma's row. "She hasn't moved in over 30 minutes. Must have been up really early this morning. Should we wake her for a drink or snack?" the other attendant asked. "No, let her sleep. She can have something when she wakes up naturally. No point disturbing her." And so Emma continued sleeping peacefully in seat 12C, completely unaware that her skills were about to be needed in a way she had never imagined. The crisis began 47 minutes into the flight with a radio transmission that made both pilots in the cockpit instantly alert. The voice that came through their headsets was crisp, professional, and carried an unmistakable note of urgency. It wasn't their usual air traffic controller. This was a different voice, a different frequency, a different kind of authority. All aircraft, this is NORAD Air Defense Sector. Be advised, we have an unidentified aircraft violating restricted airspace in the immediate vicinity of Cheyenne Mountain Complex. 2 F-16 fighter aircraft have been scrambled to intercept. All civilian traffic in the area maintain current heading and altitude until further notice. Stand by for additional instructions. Captain Walsh felt her entire body tense. She exchanged a very serious look with First Officer Chen. Both of them understood exactly what they had just heard. Cheyenne Mountain Complex was not just another military base. It was one of the most secure, most restricted, most important military installations in the entire United States, carved deep inside a mountain, protected by massive blast doors and layers of security. It housed NORAD headquarters, the North American Aerospace Defense Command Center, responsible for monitoring and defending the airspace of the United States and Canada. The complex contained the command centers that tracked every aircraft in North American airspace, monitored for missile launches, coordinated military responses to threats, and served as a potential backup command center in case of national emergency. It was, quite literally, one of the most sensitive locations in the country. An unidentified aircraft violating the restricted airspace around Cheyenne Mountain was not a small thing. It was not a minor issue. It was potentially a national security emergency. United 2847, this is Denver Center. Their regular air traffic controller's voice came through, noticeably more tense than usual. Confirm your current position and altitude. First Officer Chen responded immediately, his training taking over. Denver Center, United 2847. We're currently 73 mi northeast of Colorado Springs, flight level 350. On course as filed. Copy, United 2847. Maintain present heading and altitude. We may need to provide traffic advisories for military aircraft operating in your vicinity. Stand by, United 2847. Maintaining course. Chen confirmed. Captain Walsh's mind was already racing through possibilities and protocols. What kind of aircraft had violated restricted airspace? Was it just some confused private pilot who didn't understand where they were? Or was it something more serious, more dangerous? She keyed the cabin intercom, forcing her voice to sound calm and routine, even though her heart was beating faster. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Walsh from the flight deck. We've been asked to maintain our current course by air traffic control due to some military aircraft operations in the area. This is just a routine precaution. Nothing to be concerned about. We don't expect any delays to our arrival time in Colorado Springs. Thank you for your patience. In the cabin, most passengers barely reacted to the announcement. Military aircraft operations near Colorado Springs were relatively common, given the numerous military installations in the area. The Air Force Academy, Peterson Space Force Base, Fort Carson, Schriever Space Force Base. A few passengers looked out the windows hoping to catch a glimpse of fighter jets, but most simply returned to whatever they were doing. Emma continued sleeping in seat 12C, her breathing slow and steady, completely undisturbed by the captain's announcement. Back in the cockpit, Walsh and Chen listened intently to the radio traffic on the emergency frequencies. They could hear increased military communications, though much of it was in coded language they couldn't fully understand. But they caught enough fragments to piece together that this situation was escalating. Then, approximately 3 minutes after the initial alert, a new voice came over their radio. This voice was different from the air traffic controller. It had the clipped, precise, absolutely confident tone of a military fighter pilot. United 2847, this is Raptor Lead. Call sign Hawk. I'm the flight leader of the F-16s that were scrambled to intercept the unidentified aircraft. Be advised, the situation is deteriorating. The aircraft in question is not responding to any of our communications. It is exhibiting potentially hostile behavior and is currently on a heading that will take it over populated areas of Colorado Springs. Captain Walsh felt a cold chill run down her spine. Her years of military experience told her exactly what potentially hostile behavior meant in this context. This wasn't just some confused weekend pilot who had accidentally wandered into restricted airspace. This was something serious. This was potentially dangerous. Hawk, this is United 2847, Walsh responded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline now flooding her system. Copy your message. What information do you need from us? We're coordinating with NORAD Command right now. The next 90 seconds felt like an eternity. Walsh and Chen maintained their course and altitude, but both pilots were tense, alert, listening to every fragment of radio communication they could hear. The emergency frequencies were becoming increasingly busy with military traffic. Chen pulled up their traffic display, which showed other aircraft in the surrounding airspace. He could see the radar returns from what had to be the F-16 fighters, moving at high speeds in patterns that suggested they were actively maneuvering around something. Then came the radio transmission that would change everything. United 2847, this is NORAD Combat Operations Center. The voice carried unmistakable authority, the kind of voice that belonged to someone used to making life and death decisions. Captain Walsh, we have a code red situation developing. The unidentified aircraft is confirmed to be a stolen Cessna 182 that was reported missing from a small airport in Wyoming early this morning. The individual flying the aircraft has made threatening statements over an open radio channel. He is currently heading directly toward downtown Colorado Springs, and we have reason to believe his intentions are hostile. "Oh my God," First Officer Chen whispered, his face going pale. Captain Walsh's military training kicked in automatically. "NORAD, this is United 2847. Understood. What are your intentions regarding the threat?" "United 2847, our F-16s are attempting to force the aircraft down, but we've encountered a critical problem." There was frustration evident in the voice now. Both fighters have experienced what appears to be electronic warfare interference. Their advanced targeting systems are malfunctioning. Their data link communications with ground command are intermittent and unreliable. They can still fly their aircraft and maintain visual contact with the hostile, but their ability to coordinate a response and prevent this threat is severely compromised. Walsh's mind was racing. Electronic warfare against F-16s? What kind of capabilities did this stolen aircraft have? "NORAD, I'm not sure how a civilian airliner can assist with a military intercept operation. Captain Walsh, please stand by. We're about to make an unusual request." There was a pause, and Walsh could hear muffled voices in the background, people having an urgent discussion. Then the NORAD voice returned. "United 2847, this is going to sound highly irregular, but please understand this information comes from the highest levels of military command. We have intelligence indicating that there is a Project Horizon tactical asset currently aboard your aircraft. Call sign Viper. We need to establish immediate contact with this asset. Time is absolutely critical." Captain Walsh looked at First Officer Chen in complete confusion. Project Horizon? Call sign Viper? What were they talking about? Chen was already pulling up the passenger manifest on his tablet computer, scrolling rapidly through the list of 156 passengers. "Captain, I'm looking at our passenger list right now. I don't see anyone with military designation. No one listed as Viper. No one showing any connection to NORAD." "This is United 2847. Walsh interrupted. "We're checking our manifest, but we're not showing any military personnel on board. Can you provide more information about what we're looking for?" "Captain Walsh." The NORAD voice was more insistent now, taking on an edge of desperation. "Project Horizon is a highly classified program. The asset would not be listed with military designation on your civilian manifest. The call sign is Viper. Authorization code, Horizon 77 Charlie Victor. We need to speak with this individual immediately. Lives are at stake." Whatever was happening, it was clearly serious enough that NORAD was reaching out to a civilian airliner for help. That alone told her the situation was beyond critical. She keyed the cabin intercom, and her voice echoed throughout the passenger cabin, interrupting movies, conversations, and naps. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Walsh with an extremely important announcement. We have received an urgent request from military command. They need to speak immediately with a passenger using the call sign Viper. If anyone aboard this flight is call sign Viper, please identify yourself to a flight attendant right now. This is a matter of national security. I repeat, we urgently need to speak with call sign Viper." In the cabin, the atmosphere changed instantly. Passengers looked at each other with expressions ranging from confusion to concern to fear. What was happening? Call sign Viper? Project Horizon? National security? Business travelers closed their laptops. Parents pulled children closer. Elderly passengers exchanged worried glances. Everyone was suddenly alert, suddenly tense, suddenly aware that something very serious was happening. Patricia, the head flight attendant, had been in the forward galley organizing supplies when she heard the announcement. Her first thought was that this had to be some kind of mistake. A military call sign on a civilian flight? But the urgency in Captain Walsh's voice was unmistakable. Passengers began pressing their call buttons, asking questions. What's going on? Is there a problem? Should we be worried? Is the plane in danger? Patricia and the other flight attendants moved through the cabin, trying to keep everyone calm while also looking for anyone who might respond to the captain's request. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened. We'll have more information shortly. The businessman in seat 12A looked around nervously, wondering if there was some kind of security threat on board. The teenager in seat 12D had finally pulled out both earbuds and was looking genuinely concerned, his phone forgotten in his hands. And between them in seat 12C, Emma Rodriguez's eyes slowly opened. For a moment she was completely disoriented, her mind foggy with sleep. Where was she? What was that sound? Why did she feel so groggy? Then awareness flooded back in a rush. The airplane, the flight to Colorado Springs to see her father. She had fallen asleep, but why was everyone looking so worried? Why were people whispering urgently? What had she missed? And then, like a lightning bolt through her consciousness, she heard the echo of the captain's words in her mind. Call sign Viper, Project Horizon, National Security. Emma's entire body snapped to full alertness in an instant. All the sleepiness vanished as if someone had flipped a switch. Her training took over immediately, overriding everything else. She had spent 3 years preparing for various scenarios. Her instructors had drilled one rule into her over and over until it was automatic, until it was instinct. If you ever hear your call sign in an emergency situation, respond immediately. Don't hesitate. Don't question. Don't second guess. Lives may depend on your immediate response. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt with hands that were suddenly shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was real. This wasn't a simulation or a training exercise or a drill. Something real was happening and they needed her. She raised her hand high in the air, her voice cutting clearly through the nervous murmuring in the cabin. "Excuse me, flight attendant. I need to speak to someone right now." The businessman in seat 12A turned to stare at her in complete surprise. The little girl who had been sleeping peacefully for the past hour was suddenly wide awake and looking intense. The teenager in seat 12D looked at Emma with confusion. Why was this kid responding to a military call sign? Patricia was 3 rows away helping another passenger when she heard Emma's voice. She turned and saw the young girl, the unaccompanied minor, with her hand raised. Patricia's first instinct was to tell the child to wait, that the adults were handling the situation. But something about the expression on Emma's face made her pause. Patricia quickly made her way to row 12, trying to keep her own anxiety from showing. "Yes, sweetheart. What do you need?" Emma looked directly into Patricia's eyes, and when she spoke, her voice carried an authority that seemed impossible from someone so young. "Ma'am, I need you to take me to the cockpit immediately. My call sign is Viper." Patricia felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. She stared at this 11-year-old girl in a sparkly unicorn hoodie, and her brain simply couldn't process what she was hearing. This child? This was the tactical asset the military was desperately trying to reach. "Honey," Patricia said carefully, gently, "this is very serious. This isn't a game or make-believe. The military is—" "I know it's not a game, ma'am," Emma interrupted, her young voice taking on an edge of steel. "I am Project Horizon Tactical Asset Viper. Authorization code Horizon 77 Charlie Victor. Classification Level 7. I am trained in tactical coordination and emergency response. The military needs me right now and we're wasting time. Please take me to the cockpit immediately." The specific authorization code, the military terminology, the absolute certainty in her voice. Patricia was a 20-year veteran flight attendant who had seen almost everything, but this was completely outside her experience. Yet something about this child's demeanor, the confidence in her eyes despite her obvious fear, told Patricia this was real. "Come with me right now," Patricia said, making her decision. Emma stood up and squeezed past the businessman who was staring at her with his mouth literally hanging open. The teenager had forgotten all about his phone, watching this impossible scene unfold. As Emma and Patricia walked quickly up the aisle toward the front of the aircraft, every single passenger watched them pass. Conversations died away. Movies were paused. Everyone stared at the small girl in the purple unicorn hoodie being escorted to the cockpit. Who was she? What could an 11-year-old possibly do to help with a national security situation? It had to be some kind of mistake. Emma kept her eyes forward, focusing on her breathing, trying to calm her racing heart. Her training kicked in, automatically running through protocols and procedures. Her mind shifted into tactical mode, pushing aside her fear and her awareness that she was just a kid, focusing only on what needed to be done. At the cockpit door, Patricia knocked urgently. "Captain Walsh, I have someone responding to your call." The door opened immediately and Captain Walsh looked out, her face tense with stress and urgency. She was expecting to see an adult, maybe someone in military uniform, perhaps an off-duty officer or intelligence specialist. Instead, she saw an 11-year-old girl in a purple hoodie with a unicorn on it. "What is this?" First Officer Chen said from his seat, his voice rising with disbelief and confusion. "Is this some kind of joke?" But Emma didn't wait for them to process their shock or question her credentials. She stepped forward, with a confidence that seemed to radiate from her small frame. And when she spoke, she sounded nothing like an 11-year-old child. "Captain Walsh, my name is Emma Rodriguez. My call sign is Viper. Authorization code Horizon 77 Charlie Victor. I am a trained tactical support specialist with over 2,000 hours of simulation and coordination experience. I specialize in emergency response and crisis management. The fighters outside need my help, and we need to establish communication immediately." Captain Walsh stared at this child, her mind struggling to reconcile what she was seeing with what she was hearing. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake. But then the radio crackled and everything changed. "United 2847, this is NORAD. Have you located Viper?" Emma didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait for Captain Walsh to process the impossible situation. She simply stepped past the stunned captain, leaned toward the radio panel, and keyed the transmitter with the practiced ease of someone who had done it thousands of times before. "NORAD, this is Viper. I'm here and ready to assist." There was a brief pause on the other end, and Emma could almost feel the collective sigh of relief from the command center. "Viper, thank God." "Stand by. We're patching you through to Hawk." A new voice came through, sharp and urgent. It was the F-16 flight leader, call sign Hawk, and Emma could hear the stress and frustration in his tone. "Viper, this is Hawk. I don't know who you are or how old you are, and right now I don't care. We have a hostile aircraft, a Cessna 182, heading 270 degrees toward the downtown area of Colorado Springs at $8,000 FT. The pilot has made threats. Our tactical systems are compromised by some kind of electronic interference. We cannot get a positive weapons lock. Our communications with ground command keep cutting in and out. We can't coordinate properly, and we're running out of time. We need tactical coordination, and we need it right now." Emma closed her eyes for just a heartbeat. In that single moment, she accessed 3 years of intensive training, thousands of hours of simulations, hundreds of scenarios that her instructors had drilled into her until they became instinct. When she opened her eyes again, she wasn't Emma Rodriguez, the sleepy 11-year-old girl from Seat 12C. She was Viper, the tactical coordinator. "Hawk, this is Viper. I copy your situation. Give me your exact position relative to the hostile aircraft. Viper, we're at Angels 15. Hostile is at Angels 8. We're positioned on his 6 o'clock, approximately 2 miles back. He's flying erratically. Knows we're here." Emma's mind created a 3-dimensional map of the airspace. She visualized the positions, calculated speeds and distances, assessed the terrain below based on her extensive study of the Colorado Springs area. "Understood, Hawk. What's the terrain situation below the hostile's current position?" "He's approaching Morrison Ridge from the east. Mostly open terrain right now, some scattered residential buildings, but he'll be over dense population in approximately 4 minutes at current speed." 4 minutes. Emma felt the weight of that timeline, but her training helped her push aside the pressure and focus on solutions. "Captain Walsh," Emma said, turning to the pilot with absolute authority, "I need you to climb to 20,000 FET immediately and adjust heading to 240 degrees. First Officer Chen, can you establish a relay frequency for military communications?" Captain Walsh hesitated for exactly 1 heartbeat. Every instinct, every bit of common sense told her this was insane. She was taking tactical orders from an 11-year-old child, but the precision of those orders, the confidence in that young voice, and the desperate situation outside overcame her doubts. "Climbing to 20,000, heading 240, Walsh confirmed, her hands moving across the controls. "Establishing military relay frequency," Chen added, his fingers flying across the communication panel. And just like that, the transition was complete. Emma Rodriguez, the girl who had been peacefully dozing in Seat 12C, was now call sign Viper, coordinating a crisis that could save or cost hundreds of lives. The next 24 minutes would determine whether she was truly ready for this moment, whether all her training had prepared her for reality, whether an 11-year-old girl could really do what the most experienced tactical coordinators did. In the cabin, passengers sensed the increased urgency. Flight attendants moved through the aisles with forced calm, preparing for potential emergency procedures, though they couldn't explain what was happening. Some passengers prayed, others stared out windows. Everyone knew something serious was unfolding. Back in the cockpit, Emma was already giving her next series of commands, her young voice steady and clear. "Hawk, I need you to adjust your position. Reduce altitude to Angels 12 and move to bearing 265. Your wingman needs to position at Angels 10 bearing 250. You're going to create a funnel that gives the hostile aircraft only one safe direction to turn. Viper, we can't force him down without weapons lock. You don't need weapons, Hawk. You need positioning and psychology. Trust me. Get into position exactly where I'm telling you." Despite their confusion about taking orders from what sounded like a child's voice, the F-16 pilots followed Emma's instructions. They had been told this tactical asset was highly trained, and right now, with their systems failing, they needed all the help they could get. Emma turned to Captain Walsh. "I need you to serve as a communication relay between the fighters and ground command. Your systems aren't affected by whatever interference is hitting their aircraft. You're going to be their voice." "Understood," Walsh said, still processing the surreal situation of taking orders from an 11-year-old, and so began one of the most unusual tactical operations in modern military history. An 11-year-old girl in a unicorn hoodie standing in the cockpit of a commercial airliner, coordinating 2 F-16 fighters to intercept a potentially hostile aircraft. Emma's mind worked at incredible speed, processing information, calculating angles and speeds, predicting the hostile pilot's likely reactions, positioning the fighters like pieces on a chessboard. "Hawk, the hostile is going to react to your position by turning south. When he does, you need to be ready. Wingman, once he turns, I need you to drop down to his altitude and come alongside him. Rock your wings to signal you want him to follow you. Viper, what if he doesn't follow? He will. You're going to make him think following you is his idea, his choice, his way out. Position yourself so he can see you clearly, but doesn't feel directly threatened. Make it look like you're showing him an escape route instead of using force and threats that might make the hostile pilot more desperate and unpredictable." Emma was using positioning and suggestion to guide him toward a specific outcome. "Hostile is turning south just like you predicted," Hawk reported, surprise evident in his voice. "How did you know?" "Because when people feel trapped, they instinctively look for the biggest opening. You created that opening exactly where I needed it. Now, wingman, execute the approach I described." Captain Walsh watched in amazement as Emma orchestrated the entire operation with the precision of a seasoned tactical officer. First Officer Chen had stopped questioning anything and was simply following every instruction Emma gave. "Viper, he's following my wingman," Hawk transmitted, his voice carrying hope now instead of just stress. "Where are we taking him?" "Peterson Space Force Base has an auxiliary landing strip on the eastern edge. You're going to guide him there. Make him think he's found a safe place to land, not that you're forcing him down. Keep your distance. Don't crowd him. Let him think he's in control." The next 8 minutes were tense beyond description. Emma coordinated every movement, adjusting positions in real time, accounting for wind speeds and aircraft capabilities, managing the hostile pilot's psychology to keep him calm and compliant. "Viper, he's beginning his descent toward Peterson," Hawk reported. "I can see emergency vehicles moving into position on the ground. Stay with him, Hawk. Don't let him change his mind. Make sure he knows you're there but not threatening. You're escorting him to safety, not forcing him to land." Emma's hands were shaking now, though her voice remained steady. The adrenaline was intense. This was real. People's lives depended on her getting this right. Wheels are touching down. Hawk's voice carried unmistakable relief and excitement. "Hostile aircraft is on the ground at Peterson. Ground security forces are surrounding the aircraft." He stopped. "They're moving in now." Emma felt her knees go weak. It was over. It had worked. "Confirmed, Hawk. Excellent work. Stay in position until ground units confirm the situation is secure." "Viper?" Hawk's voice softened with genuine emotion. "I don't know who you are, I don't know how you did what you just did, but that was the most incredible piece of tactical coordination I have ever witnessed in 20 years of flying. You just saved countless lives. Thank you. Emma's training finally gave way to her emotions. She was 11 years old again, just a kid who had somehow done something impossible. Tears began streaming down her face. You're welcome, Hawk. Glad I could help. Viper out. The NORAD commander came back on the radio. United 2847, this is NORAD Command. Please convey our deepest gratitude and respect to call sign Viper. Intelligence reports suggest the hostile pilot was indeed planning an attack on a populated area. Viper's actions prevented what could have been a major catastrophe. We're coordinating with authorities for her arrival. Well done, Viper. Well done. Captain Walsh put a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder as the girl began shaking with the aftermath of adrenaline. Emma, what you just did, I don't have words. That was remarkable. First Officer Chen was shaking his head in disbelief. You're 11 years old. How is this even possible? I've been training since I was 8. Emma said, her voice small now, all the authority gone, just a scared kid processing what had happened. I never thought I'd actually have to do it for real. I was just sleeping. And then, her voice broke. Patricia, still standing in the cockpit doorway, had tears streaming down her face. Emma, sweetheart, you're a hero. You saved so many people. I just did what I was trained to do, Emma whispered. No, Walsh said firmly, kneeling down to Emma's level. You did something extraordinary. Most adults would have frozen. You stayed calm, gave perfect orders, and saved lives. Don't diminish what you did. The rest of the flight to Colorado Springs passed in a blur. Emma sat in the jump seat in the cockpit, occasionally talking with the pilots, slowly coming down from the adrenaline high. Walsh and Chen asked questions about Project Horizon, though Emma couldn't share too many classified details. When they finally landed at Colorado Springs, Emma could see through the cockpit window that there was a crowd waiting at the gate. Military police, security personnel, and news cameras. Her stomach tightened with anxiety. Your father is down there, Walsh told her gently. NORAD contacted him. He knows everything. As the aircraft came to a complete stop at the gate, Emma stood on shaky legs. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, and suddenly just wanted her dad. The moment the door opened and Emma walked into the jetway, she saw her father at the end of it. Colonel Marcus Rodriguez broke free from the military personnel surrounding him and ran toward his daughter. Mija, his voice broke with emotion. Emma dropped her backpack and ran into her father's arms. He swept her up, holding her like she was still a little girl, and she could feel him shaking, feel tears on his cheek. I heard everything, he whispered. NORAD patched through the radio traffic to my office. Emma, I was so scared, but I was so proud, so incredibly proud. You were perfect, Mija, absolutely perfect. I just did what you taught me, Daddy. Emma sobbed. I tried to remember everything from training. You did more than remember, you were brilliant, you saved so many people. After a long embrace, they had to separate for debriefings. Military officials needed detailed accounts of everything that had happened. The next several hours were filled with questions, paperwork, and official procedures. The story released to the media was carefully controlled. An off-duty tactical specialist had been aboard Flight 2847 and had assisted with a security situation. Emma's age wasn't mentioned. Her name wasn't released. Project Horizon remained classified, but the passengers from Flight 2847 knew at least part of the truth. They had seen the small girl in the unicorn hoodie being led to the cockpit. As they deplaned, many approached Emma to thank her. The businessman from seat 12A stopped in front of her, looking embarrassed. When you got on the plane, I barely noticed you. I thought you were just some kid. I'm sorry. What you did was incredible. The teenager from seat 12D pulled out his earbuds and gave her a respectful nod. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I still can't believe you were just sleeping next to me. Emma smiled shyly. Thank you. I'm just glad everyone is safe. Late that evening, after all the official business was finished, Emma and her father finally made it to his quarters at the Air Force Academy. Emma changed into comfortable pajamas, and they sat together on the couch eating pizza, trying to process the day. "Mija, I need to ask you something important," her father said gently. "Do you want to continue with Project Horizon after today, after experiencing how intense and scary it can be? No one would blame you if you wanted to stop." Emma was quiet for a long time, thinking about the fear she had felt, the pressure, the weight of knowing lives depended on her decisions. "I want to keep going," she finally said. "Today was scary, really scary, but I also kept thinking about all those people who would have been hurt if I hadn't been there. If I can help people, if I can save lives, then I want to keep training." "Are you sure? You don't have to prove anything to anyone." "I know, Daddy, but I want to. I also want to be a normal kid too. Can I do both?" Her father smiled and pulled her close. "You can absolutely do both. You can be call sign Viper when the world needs you. And you can be Emma Rodriguez, who plays soccer and reads books and argues about bedtime the rest of the time." "Deal," Emma said, smiling through her tears. That night, as Emma lay in bed processing everything that had happened, she thought about the strange journey her life had taken. This morning she had been just another tired kid dozing in seat 12C. Nobody had known she was anything special until fighter pilot said, "Call sign Viper, we need you." And she had answered. She had proven that heroes don't always look like heroes. They don't always wear uniforms or carry weapons. Sometimes they wear unicorn hoodies and light-up sneakers. Sometimes they're young and small and seem completely ordinary, until the moment when the world needs them. Emma smiled as she drifted off to sleep, proud of what she had done, but grateful she could still just be a kid. She was call sign Viper, and she was also just Emma. Both things were true. Both things mattered. And that was perfectly okay.